Ex-wife finds herself trapped in a dangerous situation with ex-husband. What is he planning now? Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. Kate Stevens never expected to be in this situation again. After years of trying to move on from her past, the last thing she thought would happen was to be face to face with Jake, her ex-husband. It's been 5 long years since their bitter divorce, and Kate had finally started to find some peace. She had her life together, her career was going well, and she was starting to rediscover her own happiness. But today, as she walks into her apartment after a long day of work, everything changes. The door swings open, and there he is. Jake Stevens, standing in the middle of her living room like he had never left. Kate froze. She couldn't believe it. He looked just as he always did, charming, calm, and a little too confident for her comfort. Her heart started to race, not from excitement but from fear. The last time she saw him, things ended in chaos. Their divorce had been messy, filled with fights and hurtful words. They hadn't spoken since that final courtroom encounter, where they both agreed to go their separate ways. But now, Jake was standing in her home, and she had no idea why. Kate took a cautious step forward, trying to mask the panic rising within her. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice steady, though she was anything but calm inside. Jake gave her a small, almost apologetic smile. "Kate, I need your help," he said, his tone serious. "I know this is unexpected, but there's something you need to know." Kate's stomach churned. "I'm not interested in anything you have to say. You need to leave." She wasn't going to let him back into her life so easily. But Jake didn't move. Instead, his eyes darkened, and for the first time, Kate felt a cold shiver run down her spine. There was something off about him, something she couldn't quite place. "I can't leave, Kate," Jake said, his voice low. "Not until you understand what's at stake. I'm in trouble, and I need you to help me get out of it." Kate's mind raced. What kind of trouble was Jake in? And why was he coming to her after all this time? She tried to keep her composure, but deep down, she knew this wasn't just some random visit. Jake was planning something, and Kate had a feeling it had everything to do with her. She just didn't know what. What she did know was that she had to be careful. She couldn't let him manipulate her again, not after everything they'd been through. But then, as she stared at him, she realized that this time was different. This time, the stakes were higher. And if she didn't act fast, she could find herself in more danger than she ever imagined. Kate stepped back, her mind racing as she processed Jake's words. "I can't leave, Kate," he had said, and she could feel the weight of his statement. His presence in her home was unsettling, and despite the calmness in his voice, she could tell that something was wrong. She had always known Jake to be someone who would never show his true emotions unless absolutely necessary. But now, the mask was slipping, and she wasn't sure whether to feel sorry for him or fear him. She crossed her arms over her chest, trying to regain control of the situation. "What kind of trouble are you in, Jake?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. Jake hesitated, his eyes darting toward the door as though he was afraid someone might be listening. Kate could tell he was holding something back, something important. "It's complicated," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need your help, Kate. I know this is a lot to ask, but I'm out of options." Kate's brow furrowed. She had always prided herself on her ability to stay composed, but Jake was throwing her off balance. She had no idea what he was involved in now, but she could feel the tension building in the room. Her instincts told her to be cautious, to turn him away, but something about his desperation tugged at her. "Why me?" she asked, her voice softening despite herself. "Why come to me after everything that happened?" Jake exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging. Because you're the only one I can trust, he said, his tone sincere. Kate felt a pang of something she couldn't quite identify. The old feelings, the ones she had buried so deep, were starting to resurface. She quickly shoved them aside, focusing on the matter at hand. "And what exactly do you want me to do?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. Jake looked at her for a long moment before speaking again, his voice tense. "I need you to help me find something," he said. "Something that's worth a lot of money, and I can't do it alone. I thought, maybe you could help me get it back." Kate's confusion deepened. "What kind of thing are we talking about here? And why do I need to be involved?" Jake hesitated, and for the first time, Kate saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I can't explain all of it yet," he said, his voice strained. "But it's dangerous. And I need someone who knows how to think under pressure. Someone like you." Kate shook her head. This was insane. She couldn't get involved in whatever Jake had dragged her into. But as much as she wanted to refuse, a small part of her was intrigued. Why had he chosen her? What kind of mess had he gotten himself into this time? She didn't know, but one thing was certain, she wasn't going to let him manipulate her again. Not after everything that had happened between them. "I'm not getting involved in this, Jake," she said firmly. "You need to leave." But Jake stepped closer, his eyes pleading now. "Please, Kate," he begged. "I'm running out of time. If I don't get this, everything is going to fall apart." Kate took a step back, her mind racing. What had she just gotten herself into? Kate stood there, her heart pounding as she stared at Jake. The desperation in his eyes was palpable, but so was the anger and betrayal she felt deep inside. How could he think she would help him after everything that had happened between them? She had spent years trying to forget their past, and here he was, dragging her right back into the mess. The old wounds, the old fears. They were all starting to resurface. But Jake's pleading expression kept her rooted to the spot. She felt the pull of their shared history, the connection that had once been so strong. "Please, Kate." Jake's voice was softer now, almost pleading. "I wouldn't ask if I didn't have to. This is bigger than both of us. You don't have to trust me completely, but just help me get through this, okay?" Kate's mind raced, torn between her need for closure and the nagging feeling that she might be walking into something far more dangerous than she realized. She crossed her arms over her chest, trying to steady her nerves. "I don't know, Jake," she said, her voice low but firm. "What exactly are we talking about here? What do you mean by everything is going to fall apart? I need to understand what I'm getting myself into before I agree to anything." Jake seemed to hesitate, his eyes darting to the door again as if he was checking for someone. The tension in the room was thick, and Kate felt every second stretch on endlessly. Finally, he spoke, his voice a little steadier this time. "There's something I've been working on for months. Something that could change everything for me, for us, really. But it's locked away in a place I can't get to on my own." Kate frowned, trying to make sense of his words. "What kind of thing could be so important? Why don't you just go to the police if it's that serious?" she asked, the suspicion growing in her chest. Jake shook his head, his face hardening. "It's not that simple. If I went to the police, I'd be risking everything I've worked for, everything I've built. I need to do this quietly, and I need someone I can trust. Someone who's smart, who knows how to handle tough situations." Kate couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was not the man she had once married. Jake had always been someone who could charm his way through anything, always looking for shortcuts and manipulations. And now here he was, desperate for her help. "You want me to trust you again after everything?" Kate asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "You can't be serious." Jake looked at her, his face softening just a little. "I know I messed up, Kate. I know I hurt you and I can't undo that. But what I'm asking for now is for you to help me with this one thing. Please." Kate was silent for a long moment, her mind spinning. She didn't want to get involved, didn't want to fall into Jake's games again. But the way he was looking at her, the sincerity in his eyes, made it hard to turn him away completely. Maybe she could help him without getting too entangled. Maybe she could just get him what he needed and walk away without getting hurt again. "All right," she finally said, her voice steady but her heart racing. "I'll help you. But after this, we're done. No more contact. You got that?" Jake nodded quickly, a look of relief washing over him. "I understand, Kate. I promise, once this is over, you won't have to deal with me again." Kate tried to ignore the doubts that were creeping up inside her. She had made a deal with Jake before, and it hadn't ended well. But this time, it felt different. This time, she wasn't going to let herself fall into his trap. She would help him, but only on her terms. She just hoped it would be enough to keep her safe. And as she stood there, watching Jake, she knew that whatever happened next, her life was about to change forever. Kate had barely said the words before Jake's face lit up with a mix of relief and gratitude. She had agreed to help him, but part of her still felt unsure. As much as she wanted to believe that she could help Jake without getting too involved, she knew the chances were slim. She had been down this road with him before, and it had never ended well. But there was something different this time. There was a sense of urgency in his eyes, a fear that Kate couldn't ignore. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't playing her this time. "All right," Kate said, taking a deep breath. "Tell me what I need to do." Jake nodded, his hands clasped together in front of him. "I need you to meet someone. I can't go to them myself. They won't talk to me, but they might listen to you." Kate raised an eyebrow. "Who?" she asked, her voice cautious. Jake hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether to tell her the truth or not. Finally, he sighed. "His name is Victor Kane. He's complicated. But he's the only one who can help me get what I need." Kate's mind raced. She had heard of Victor Kane. He was known to be a shadowy figure, someone who operated outside the law, and his connections were said to run deep. Kate didn't want to get tangled in whatever mess Jake had gotten himself into, but she knew that if she didn't follow through, she would never be able to put this behind her. "When do I meet him?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Jake gave her a tight smile. "Tonight," he said. "I'll give you the details, and you'll need to go alone. It's safer that way." Kate frowned. "Why me? Why not just handle it yourself?" Jake's face darkened. "Because they won't trust me, Kate. You have a better chance of getting in without raising suspicion. Please, just trust me on this." Kate could hear the desperation in his voice, but she also knew how good he was at convincing people. She didn't want to fall into his trap again, but there was no turning back now. She had agreed to help, and she would see this through. "Fine," she said, "but I'm doing this on my terms. No more games." Jake's expression softened, and for a moment, he looked like the man she had once loved. "I promise, Kate," he said quietly. "Once this is over, I'll stay out of your life for good." Kate nodded, although part of her wasn't sure if she could believe him. The past had taught her that promises were often broken. Later that evening, Kate found herself standing outside a nondescript building in the city, the address Jake had given her. The street was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. She could feel the tension in the air, a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was the first step, and no matter how much she wanted to back out, she couldn't. She had to know what Jake was really involved in, and what this meeting with Victor Kane would reveal. As she approached the door, her heart raced. She knocked softly, waiting for a response. A few moments later, the door creaked open, and a man stood there, his face shadowed in the dim light. "You Kate?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Kate nodded, her throat dry. "I am." The man stepped aside, motioning for her to enter. As she crossed the threshold, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. As Kate stepped inside the dimly lit room, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air was thick with tension, and her mind raced with thoughts of what might happen next. The man who had opened the door led her through a narrow hallway to a small, sparsely furnished office. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a faint glow over the room. At the far end of the room sat a man behind a desk, his face obscured by shadows. Kate couldn't make out any details, but she could feel his gaze on her. "Sit," the man said, his voice low and gruff. Kate hesitated but took the seat opposite him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what to expect from this meeting, but the uncertainty of the situation made her feel like she was walking a fine line between danger and opportunity. The man behind the desk leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped in front of him. "You must be Kate," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "Jake spoke highly of you." Kate didn't respond right away. She wasn't sure how to react to the way he spoke. It felt like he already knew too much. "I don't know why I'm here," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Jake said you could help me with something. But I still don't understand what this is all about." The man studied her for a long moment before he spoke again. "Jake's situation is complicated," he said. "But he's right about one thing. You're the only one who can get what he needs." Kate frowned, trying to make sense of his words. "What does he need? And why me?" The man's expression didn't change. "Jake is in over his head. He's been looking for something very valuable, and he can't get it on his own. That's where you come in." Kate's pulse quickened. She had a feeling she wasn't going to like what she was about to hear. "I don't want to be involved in whatever Jake's gotten himself into," she said, her voice firm. "I'm only here because I agreed to help him, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to do anything illegal or dangerous." The man leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving hers. "Don't worry," he said. "This isn't about anything illegal. It's a matter of business. And Jake needs someone who can navigate these kinds of situations without drawing too much attention." Kate didn't believe him, but she couldn't exactly walk out of the room without hearing him out. "What kind of business?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. The man smirked slightly, as if amused by her caution. "You'll find out soon enough. But first, you need to understand that if you do this, there's no turning back. You'll be involved in something much bigger than you realize, and you can't walk away when things get tough." Kate's stomach churned. She didn't like the sound of that, but she couldn't back out now. Not after everything she had already agreed to. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she asked, already knowing there was no turning back. The man's smile widened, and for the first time, Kate saw something resembling respect in his eyes. "I need you to go to a place. There, you'll find something Jake needs. It's locked away, and you're the only one who can get to it. Once you have it, you'll bring it back to me." Kate didn't know what to think. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions, but one thing was clear: whatever she was about to get involved in, it wasn't just about helping Jake anymore. It was much bigger than that. And as she stood up to leave the room, she knew she had just stepped into a world she didn't fully understand, and there was no way out now. Kate stepped out of the building, her mind still spinning from the conversation she had just had. The air outside felt cooler than it had earlier, but it did nothing to ease the unease gnawing at her. She had agreed to help Jake, but now, she was more uncertain than ever about what she had just gotten herself into. As she walked down the quiet street, her thoughts raced. The man, Victor Kane, hadn't been forthcoming with details. He had told her that Jake needed her to retrieve something, but what exactly was it? And why was it so important? Her steps slowed as she considered her next move. She had to meet someone, but she had no idea what kind of place she was walking into, or what the consequences would be if things went wrong. She had always been cautious, but now, she felt as if she was standing on the edge of something far beyond her control. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from Jake. "Meet me at the usual spot," it read. Kate stopped in her tracks, staring at the screen. The usual spot. It was a place they had once frequented when they were still married, a small, nondescript cafe in the corner of the city. The memories of their time there flooded back, times when things had been simpler, before everything had fallen apart. She hadn't been back there since the divorce, and the thought of returning there made her uneasy. Still, she couldn't back out now. She had made a promise, and she wasn't about to break it. As she made her way toward the cafe, the weight of the situation began to settle in. What had she agreed to? Jake had asked her for help, but she had no idea what kind of trouble he was in. And now, this meeting with Victor Kane, a man she knew only by reputation, had made everything even more complicated. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The familiar smell of coffee and pastries filled the air, but it did little to comfort her. She spotted Jake sitting at a table in the back, his back to the door. As she approached, he turned and gave her a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You came," he said, his voice strained. "Of course I did," Kate replied, sitting down across from him. "But I still don't understand what this is all about, Jake. What is it that you need from me?" Jake took a deep breath, his gaze shifting to the floor for a moment before he met her eyes again. "I told you before, Kate. I'm in a lot of trouble. There's something I need to get, and I can't do it alone." Kate studied him carefully, her mind still racing with questions. "And Victor Kane, what does he have to do with this?" Jake leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "Victor is connected. He has access to things I can't get to on my own. And I trust him. But the thing is, he won't deal with me. He won't even talk to me unless you're involved." Kate's heart raced at the mention of Victor's name. She didn't trust him, not after everything she had heard about him. But Jake had always been convincing, and part of her believed that he was genuinely trying to get out of something dangerous. "So what now?" Kate asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake looked at her, his expression hardening. "Now we wait. We wait for Victor to make his move. But when he does, you'll need to be ready. You're the one who has to get in and get what I need." Kate nodded slowly, though her mind was still reeling. She had agreed to help him, but now, the gravity of the situation was setting in. She was about to be pulled deeper into Jake's world, a world that she had tried to leave behind. She couldn't help but wonder if she was making a mistake. But it was too late to turn back now. As the minutes passed, the silence between them grew heavier. Kate knew that once she agreed to this, there would be no going back. She was already in deeper than she'd ever wanted to be. Kate sat at the small table in the corner of the cafe, the faint clink of dishes and quiet murmur of other patrons filling the background, but her mind was elsewhere. She stared down at the coffee in front of her, the surface swirling as if to mirror the storm inside her. The room felt too small, the walls closing in, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change in a way she couldn't predict. Jake had been right about one thing, there was no turning back now. She was in this, for better or worse, and the weight of that realization was starting to settle heavily on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed again, and her stomach tightened. She had been expecting the message, but seeing it confirmed what she had been trying to avoid thinking about. Victor was ready. She stood up, her legs feeling stiff beneath her, and grabbed her purse, the strap sliding over her shoulder as she made her way out of the cafe. The streets outside were quieter now, the evening settling in with a soft chill in the air. As she walked down the sidewalk, her thoughts kept circling back to the same question: what exactly had she gotten herself into? The conversation with Victor earlier still echoed in her ears. He had been vague, only offering enough information to keep her hooked, and now, it felt like she was stepping into a world where she didn't know the rules. She had trusted Jake, at least to some extent, but Victor was a different story. He was a name that sent shivers down her spine, someone who operated in the shadows, and Kate had never been someone who thrived in that kind of environment. Yet here she was, walking into it, her feet moving almost on their own as she neared the address Victor had given her. It was another nondescript building, this one even less inviting than the last. She could see a single light shining from the upper floor, but everything else seemed abandoned. Kate hesitated for a moment, standing in front of the door, her heart hammering in her chest. She had to trust that she was making the right decision, but doubts kept creeping in. The past few weeks had thrown her into a whirlwind, and now she felt like she was spiraling into something she couldn't control. Taking a deep breath, she reached out and knocked twice. The door opened almost immediately, revealing a man she didn't recognize. His face was unreadable, his features sharp, and his eyes cold as they met hers. He stepped aside without a word, and Kate walked in. The room was dim, with only a few scattered pieces of furniture, and a heavy atmosphere that felt thicker than the air outside. Victor was sitting at a table, his back to her, his posture rigid. She could tell that he wasn't alone. There was another man in the corner, standing motionless, his arms crossed over his chest. "You came," Victor said, not bothering to turn around. "I knew you would." Kate stood still for a moment, trying to steady her nerves. "What now?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Victor finally turned around, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Now we get to work." The smile didn't reach his eyes, and something about it made Kate uneasy. She couldn't explain why, but she felt as though this was a point of no return. Whatever was about to happen, it wasn't just about helping Jake anymore. It was something far more dangerous, and she was already too far in to walk away. "You have a job to do," Victor continued, his voice low, deliberate. "And if you do it right, you'll get what you want." Kate's heart raced again. She had no idea what the next steps were, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't back out now. The door behind her shut with a soft click, sealing her fate. The world outside felt a million miles away, and Kate could only wonder if she would ever find her way back to it again. As Victor motioned for her to approach the table, Kate took a deep breath and walked toward him, her mind already turning over the next challenge she would have to face. No matter how much she wanted to resist, she knew this was only the beginning. Kate stood in front of Victor's table, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The air in the room felt thicker, heavier, and her instincts were screaming at her to leave. But her feet remained rooted to the floor, and she could do nothing but listen as Victor began to explain what she needed to do. "The item you're retrieving is hidden," Victor said, his voice cold and calculated, as if he was outlining a business transaction, not a life-changing decision. "You'll have to go through a series of steps to get it. First, you need to find the location. After that, the rest will fall into place." Kate's head spun. This was no longer just about helping Jake. She had stepped into something far bigger than herself, and she wasn't sure if she could handle it. But the promise of closure, of finally understanding what Jake had gotten himself into, kept her from walking away. "Where do I start?" Kate asked, her voice trembling slightly, betraying the uncertainty she felt inside. Victor gave her a sharp look before responding. "I'll give you the information you need, but you'll be on your own. No help, no backup. Do you understand?" Kate nodded. There was no turning back. The moment she had agreed to this, she had known there would be no easy way out. "I understand," she said, her voice steady now, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Good," Victor said, pushing a manila envelope toward her. "Everything you need is inside. Follow the instructions carefully, and don't trust anyone along the way." The chill in his voice was impossible to ignore. Kate took the envelope, her fingers brushing against it, feeling the weight of it as if it carried the burden of her next steps. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Time was ticking, and she had no idea how long she had before everything fell apart. She tucked the envelope into her bag, her hands shaking slightly, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. Victor stood up, his movements deliberate, slow. "You have your instructions. Don't fail me," he said, his eyes narrowing as he watched her. "And remember, Kate, once you start this, there's no going back. You'll be in this, whether you like it or not." The finality in his voice hit her like a ton of bricks. As she turned to leave, her mind raced with the gravity of what she was about to do. She had crossed the line, and there was no undoing it. As she stepped outside, the cold air hit her face, snapping her out of the daze she had been in. The city around her seemed unfamiliar, like a maze she was being forced to navigate without a map. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. There was no turning back now. As she walked down the street, every step felt heavier than the last. She had made her choice, and now, she would see it through. The envelope in her bag felt like a ticking time bomb, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen that would change everything. The question wasn't whether she would survive this. It was what kind of person she would be when it was all over. She had made a promise to Jake, but now, she was in too deep. She wasn't sure if she could keep that promise, and she wasn't sure if she even wanted to anymore. Kate stood in front of Victor's table, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The air in the room felt thicker, heavier, and her instincts were screaming at her to leave. But her feet remained rooted to the floor, and she could do nothing but listen as Victor began to explain what she needed to do. "The item you're retrieving is hidden," Victor said, his voice cold and calculated, as if he was outlining a business transaction, not a life-changing decision. "You'll have to go through a series of steps to get it. First, you need to find the location. After that, the rest will fall into place." Kate's head spun. This was no longer just about helping Jake. She had stepped into something far bigger than herself, and she wasn't sure if she could handle it. But the promise of closure, of finally understanding what Jake had gotten himself into, kept her from walking away. "Where do I start?" Kate asked, her voice trembling slightly, betraying the uncertainty she felt inside. Victor gave her a sharp look before responding. "I'll give you the information you need, but you'll be on your own. No help, no backup. Do you understand?" Kate nodded. There was no turning back. The moment she had agreed to this, she had known there would be no easy way out. "I understand," she said, her voice steady now, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Good," Victor said, pushing a manila envelope toward her. "Everything you need is inside. Follow the instructions carefully, and don't trust anyone along the way." The chill in his voice was impossible to ignore. Kate took the envelope, her fingers brushing against it, feeling the weight of it as if it carried the burden of her next steps. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Time was ticking, and she had no idea how long she had before everything fell apart. She tucked the envelope into her bag, her hands shaking slightly, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. Victor stood up, his movements deliberate, slow. "You have your instructions. Don't fail me," he said, his eyes narrowing as he watched her. "And remember, Kate, once you start this, there's no going back. You'll be in this, whether you like it or not." The finality in his voice hit her like a ton of bricks. As she turned to leave, her mind raced with the gravity of what she was about to do. She had crossed the line, and there was no undoing it. As she stepped outside, the cold air hit her face, snapping her out of the daze she had been in. The city around her seemed unfamiliar, like a maze she was being forced to navigate without a map. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. There was no turning back now. As she walked down the street, every step felt heavier than the last. She had made her choice, and now, she would see it through. The envelope in her bag felt like a ticking time bomb, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen that would change everything. The question wasn't whether she would survive this. It was what kind of person she would be when it was all over. She had made a promise to Jake, but now, she was in too deep. She wasn't sure if she could keep that promise, and she wasn't sure if she even wanted to anymore.